From the box office flops to behind-the-scenes drama, the DC Extended Universe will be ending not with a bang, rather a whimper. You might think that James Gunn should be able to outdo the DCEU easily, but I think there's a lot of pressure on him. A lot is riding on the success of his new big Superman movie, not least because it's going to be our introduction to the DC Universe. Earlier this year, Gunn revealed his initial slate of DC movies, calling this phase of the franchise Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. He showed off a handful of movies and TV shows. At this point, though, all of those are super theoretical. We just have the barest of outlines to what those movies will actually look like when they come out. Superman Legacy is the only one of these movies that has a confirmed release date. The movie is set to land in theaters on the 11th of July 2025, and we know for a fact that this will be the first movie of the new DCU. In a way, Superman Legacy is in the same position that Man of Steel was a decade ago. Zack Snyder was using that movie to introduce us to his shiny new cinematic universe. Well, that movie was, in hindsight, far from the worst that DCEU had to offer. It was definitely a sign of things to come. That's precisely why Superman Legacy is going to be really important for the DCU. There's another thing that this movie will have in common with Man of Steel. It's also being written and directed by the architect of the franchise. Although Snyder was in charge of the DCEU in the beginning, he didn't direct all of the movies. He tackled the most important ones: Man of Steel, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and Justice League. But other movies, like Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad, were helmed by different directors. Still, it was clear that Snyder was setting the agenda of the DCEU. The dark tone of the movies, as well as the grim storylines and emphasis on cool slow-mo action, were hallmarks of the franchise that he set. James Gunn will be doing the same for the DCU. I mean, it was only recently that Gunn was even confirmed as the director for Superman Legacy. But since he wrote the screenplay and is in charge of the whole dang studio, it's his lead that everyone else will follow. So if Gunn decides to make Superman Legacy a goofy and ultra-violent movie like his Suicide Squad and Peacemaker were, then that's what the DCU will be like. The Batman movie, for example, will only be more serious compared to Legacy. By the way, a goofy and ultra-violent Superman movie would be terrible, but it'd be the kind of terrible I'd really be into. Since I've been comparing Superman Legacy to Man of Steel, there's an important difference between the two. The setup is very different. Although Zack Snyder had some crazy ideas for the DCEU, they weren't exactly tough sells for the audience. The movies he made before his departure from the franchise had plenty of audience appeal. You don't need to convince people to turn up to a Superman movie, nor do you need to convince them to turn up for a Batman or Wonder Woman flick. And he had the honor of making the first ever Justice League film.
Arthur, we need to restrain him.
How about that? But Gunn's slate of DC projects is, as you'd expect, more off-kilter. Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, consists of a Superman and Batman movie, as you'd expect. It also has a Supergirl movie.
Thank you, Supergirl.
And movies featuring the Authority and Swamp Thing. Not to mention a TV show based on, of all things, the Creature Commandos. Fans these days understand how cinematic universes work. They'll be more than happy to watch movies and shows based on characters they don't recognize if they have a reason to. After all, people turned up to see Guardians of the Galaxy because they'd been sold on the MCU by Iron Man, Captain America, and others. For a DC example, Aquaman destroyed everyone's box office expectations because Wonder Woman had done well. If the DCU can't even get Superman right, you can expect empty seats at the Authority movie. You'll have more of a Shazam situation basically. There's one more real-world reason Superman Legacy has to succeed. I think people are tired of bad Superman movies. No, really, when was the last time you saw a Superman movie that was, without qualification, any good? Some might say Superman Returns was decent, but it hasn't been remembered particularly well. But between the last couple of Christopher Reeve films and Man of Steel, Superman has had a rough time in theaters. I feel that people are kinda exhausted with subpar Superman movies at this point. On one hand, there's an opportunity here. If Superman Legacy happens to be the first genuinely great Supes movie after all this time, James Gunn and Warner Brothers will be drowning in cash. But if Superman Legacy is yet another mediocre or bad movie, people just won't turn up. I have to say, I'm surprised that Gunn decided to kick off his DC universe with a Superman movie. There were definitely safer bets that he could have taken, but since he's writing and directing the movie, he must really believe in it. Now, I've talked a lot about the meta reasons for why Superman Legacy needs to succeed. Allow me to now step into this nascent DC universe. Superman is the heart of DC. See, Batman and the others are cool characters, and they can make for great standalone movies. But if we're talking about a DC universe, then you need Superman to be at the core of it all. That's one of the biggest missteps Zack Snyder made with the DCEU. His Superman was morally conflicted even by the time Man of Steel ended, and then he died in Batman v Superman. You can see how that portrayal of Clark affected the rest of the franchise. Back when Henry Cavill and Superman were mainstays of the franchise, Batman was an unrepentant killer. Wonder Woman was just a generic warrior lady. Aquaman was a disaffected loner. The Flash had a terrible sense of humor. And the less said about how Cyborg was treated, the better. Once Superman was out of the series, everything kinda splintered off. While all these characters continued to be in movies, they weren't really connected to each other. The thing that tied them all together was gone. This is why James Gunn really needs to get Superman right. Because for all his efforts, if his Superman doesn't work, there's no way any of the rest of the franchise can work. You know what though? I'm optimistic. When it comes to the DCU, the JG is a symbol of hope. Say what you will about James Gunn, but there's a very good chance that Superman Legacy will be great. It's just statistics after all. The guy's been making superhero movies for basically his entire career, and the dude has never missed. Clearly, he understands the nature of superheroes and their movies on a level that a lot of directors don't. If you think about it, making a Superman movie was Gunn's destiny, in a way. Clark Kent is the standard that superheroes strive for. He's the one that any do-gooder, from DC to even Marvel, strives to be. Captain America may be a Boy Scout, but Supes is the chief of the Scouts. Translating Superman to the screen isn't gonna be easy. It'll probably be the biggest challenge of Gunn's career so far, but I have faith that he'll smash it out of the park, just like he always does. That's all I have for you today, folks.